There we go. All right. So, welcome back, everybody. Again, Matt Murphy, C Incorporated, safety consultant, and have worked with Preferred for 20 plus years. So, very long relationship there. Always happy to answer safety questions if you have them. I'll put my contact information in the chat before we end. Again, we try to make this as informal as possible. So, we'll get through the information in our PowerPoint, but by all means, if you have questions, just ask. We'll be happy to try to answer as much as possible. You should see my screen. Um, Again, we want you to know, what is the OSHA 300 form? What's the 300A? When are you supposed to fill it out? How are you supposed to fill it out? Are COVID cases recordable? That's still a question that keeps popping up, although COVID seems to be a little bit on the back burner with most people. But there's still a lot of information, so we'll try to get through everything. Big thing to know, employers with 10 or more employees at any time during the calendar year are required to do an OSHA 300 form. There is a small exclusion list if you're a boat dealer. If you are there's a handful of industries that aren't required to do record keeping. But if you're in construction, if you're in manufacturing, more than likely you are supposed to be keeping track of your injuries and illnesses. Um, with that being said, what do we put it on? How do we do it? We'll talk about all that. All recordables and anything resulting in hospitalization or fatality or a loss of amputation of any sort or loss of eye all requires you to record, and those that I just mentioned requires you to talk to OSHA. Anything with a lost workday, medical treatment beyond first aid. We'll talk about the difference between first aid and beyond first aid. And then if it required job transfer or termination, if there included loss of consciousness, those are all going to be uh, put on this form. So here's what the form looks like. Every time you get a new case, you need to put it on your OSHA 300 form within 3 days. All right. So a lot of people wait, and right now they're scrambling to pull all their accident data and put it on this OSHA 300 form. Well, you're supposed to keep this current throughout the entire year. So at any time, you could pull this. Well, we don't know what the diagnosis is going to be. We don't know how long this person's going to be out. That's okay. You're going to open the case number when it happens. You're going to put the information you can in, and then you'll update everything as it goes along. So if you look at column A on this sheet, it says case number. That's your number. Don't call OSHA and ask them for a number. Okay. That's your number. So if it's one, call it one or O1, however you want to do that. Employee's name, you would put that there unless it's a privacy case. So if that employee comes to you and says, I do not want my name shared with OSHA, you would put privacy case one, and then you would have a separate file with all that information. Job title, important. Date of injury, that's that D column. E column is where the event occurred. So if it's a job site name or something like that, you would put that there. Or if it was in on the in room 304, whatever that description is, and then the description of injury or illness. You want to make this general. You're going to have all this information, but it needs to be filled out correctly. Then we go over here to the shaded areas, right? And that's where you have G, H, I, and J. And you're going to go over and check off which one it resulted in that was the worst. If the person was off several days without work, but then it ended up in a death, you don't check both boxes. Death is the worst, and that's where it would be. Then we go to job transfers, job restrictions, and then back up from there. Then we put in our days. You might have 3 days away from work, but 40 days that were on restriction. All right, you fill in both of those. And then finally, wasn't an injury, and you see all those boxes there. All that stuff needs to be filled out. At the end of the year, we're going to total this stuff and we're going to put it on our 300A form. So February 1st to the end of April, we have to have that 300A form there and posted where the employees can see it. You'll see the year, make sure you put in the year, the establishment name, city, state, etc. So any questions on this part so far? If it's a privacy case, let's say there was a needle stick or a sexual assault. Those are things that would be usually privacy cases. Um, and it happened to your welder, but you only have one welder. You wouldn't just put privacy case and then welder. You would blank out any of the information that could lean it back to that person and just put privacy case there. All right. All right. This is your 300A. You can see if we go back, oops, sorry. If we go back here, you can see those little letters at the top of each of the columns, and now you see them below the blanks here. This is where we total everything out. So we put total number of deaths, total number of cases away from work. We put the total cases with job site transfer and restriction here, and total of other recordables. So those numbers just get added up. If it's zero, mark zero. You can't just put a line through it.
Hey, Matt, we do have a question in chat. It's probably a good time to
Okay.
ask this one. So Steve is asking if an employee was injured on Friday, gets stitches in his hand, released for full duty on Monday, an employee calls in unrelated sick on Monday, works on Tuesday, works on Tuesday. How many days off for OSHA 300? 2 or 3?
So we don't count the day of the accident, right? So we don't count the day that the person got hurt. That would be Friday. So Saturday, Sunday, he's off. Well, they're usually off during the weekend. Well, if the PLHCP, the practicing healthcare provider, says they're off for X number of days, that's what we go by. All right. If they were given no time off, they could come back Monday and cleared, then they're back Monday. We don't have days there. They decide to take a day off because they felt like taking a day off. That's on them. Okay. So we go by what the doctor says to take off. That's where we go there. Hopefully that answers that. We'll talk about it again here soon. Thank you, Steve.
We have another question. Uh,
Yep.
do we have to let the employees know that we need to put this name and info on the OSHA form?
It's not a bad idea because if you're in construction, and we're going to get into this again later, great questions so far. But if we need to put this on, we're going to record this information over to OSHA. So some of this information is going to get moved over to OSHA through the reporting process there. So they may not want their name to be on any of this stuff for public record, et cetera. But yeah, you can let them know, hey, this was a recordable. We're going to have to put you on the OSHA 300 form. Do you have any problem with that? And if they say, well, I have a problem with my name being on there, then they become a privacy case. That's not a bad thing. All right. Any other questions there? All right, so back here to the establishment information. You need your establishment name. You need the street address. You need the city, the state, the zip, and then you need the NAICS code. All right, NAICS code. If you don't know what that is, look at last year's OSHA 300 information. If this is the first year you're putting this together, ask your insurance agent. They charge you insurance per your NAICS code, or you can Google it. If you put NAICS code and I'm a plumber, residential, it's going to tell you on Google what your NAICS code is. Then you click on that and it says plumber, residential under so many houses or over so many houses. And that's where it kind of runs down to exactly what your number is. That code follows you everywhere. You go get a loan, you get insurance, you get anything. That's all going, it's putting you in the group of people that do what you do. Okay. So that's what that is. How many employees do you have and how many hours are worked per year? That's important information that needs to be there and correct. Then below that, there's a company signature. That's a company executive, usually highest ranking company executive. We might have multiple OSHA 300 forms. Okay. Why would we have that? Well, we have a project that's going to be going for the next 2 years or 3 years. Well, that's considered a satellite location. All right. So we have the 300 form that's for our company. That's everybody who reports into the office every day. Now we have this site over here where we have 4 or 5 team members assigned for a couple of years. They would require their own OSHA 300 form. All right. They don't end up on the same form. So satellite location over here does not end up on main company's form. Okay. I call this the think about Walmart rule. If you go to Walmart and you happen to go to the restroom between February 1st and the end of April, their OSHA 300 form is their 300A form is posted right by their employment posters. That number is not for the entire United States. That's for that store. Okay. So that's a different physical location. Now, here's where the tricks come in. If I'm at physical location home office and somebody got sick and I'm just filling in for a couple of days and I go out to the other physical location, satellite one, and I get hurt, I'm not on satellite one's OSHA 300 form. Well, that's confusing. Well, where am I assigned to? That's the important part. Where am I assigned to? Where am I expected to be on a regular basis? That's where I end up. Okay. So if you have questions about this, and I'm sure you will, again, I'll give you my number. Feel free to call. But those satellite locations had their own OSHA 300 forms. Yes, we would keep copies of them in the office, but no, we don't take that information and then put them on the office information for the company. Does that make sense to everybody? We kind of got that figured out. Cool. All right. So here's a flow chart. I always tell people, feel free, take a picture, whatever you want to do with this one. But this is kind of your thought process when it comes to do I record it or not? Recordability does not equal compensability, okay? Because a lot of people kind of get that confused. So all we're talking about is it recordable or not? So A, did the employee experience an injury or illness? Yes or no? Just keep it there. Yes or no? Then, is the injury or illness work related? And we'll talk about that. If it's yes, we continue to go on and we say, is the injury or illness a new case? Well, here's when we get into some tricky parts. A lot of times, and as safety professionals and HR directors, etc., you're told all the time, close out cases as fast as you can, get them back to work as quick as possible. And you really want to make sure you get, them back to work without restrictions as soon as possible. In most cases, yes. In some cases, maybe not. Why? Because we already have a case open. If they have a bad back, if they have bad certain structural issues that may take a while to heal, if they come back 100% and then they re-injure it a week later, that becomes a new case. If they're still in care, if they're not released 100% and they get re-injured a week later, we just tack on days to the original recording. Okay. So last year, George fell, slipped, blew out his shoulder, hurt his back. Okay, well, we've got it. We start recording it. Well, George was out for a long time. In fact, he hit the 180 day, which is the maximum days that you will record. Doesn't matter if the person's out 3 years. 180 days is the maximum number you put in for a single instance. So George came back working again and gets hurt again, but wasn't released fully. You go back and you've already had 180 days. You already got the numbers. There's no reason to start a new case. All right. Now, George was only out for 30 days. Again, same case, was not released back 100% and got hurt again. Then we're just going to increase from that 30 days to 45, 50, 60, whatever it takes to get that person back. Okay. Is that clear or is that kind of talking in circles a little bit? Everybody got that? Go ahead, John.
So let's say I've got an employee that gets injured and at first he goes on restriction, 60 days, let's say. And then on day 61, he goes to evaluate with his doctor and they say they're not getting any better. You just need to stay off work completely. And then he goes for, say, 200 days. Well, we're going to record 180. Is it total or 60 work restrictions and then 180?
180 total.
Okay. And that 180 total, do I do 60 work restricted and then 120?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
I wouldn't just record the most severe. It'd be the first 180 days.
Yeah, because he already had some work restrictions, so you already have to count those days where work restriction, and they took him completely out. So, did he
Okay.
job transfer or did he just lose employment because he can't do that anymore, right? So that would max out at 180 days, though. Yes, you are correct. Great question. So if it's a new case, we put it back on this year's 300 form. Does the injury or illness meet the general recording criteria or the application of the specific case? So again, we follow our flow chart. Now we're at that bottom one, yes or no. So now we'll get into some of that information as well. Scenario A, worker reports to the nurse's station with complaint of painful wrists. Do we go to step two? Let's look at our chart again. Did the employee experience an injury or illness? Yes or no? Shake your head. I have some people saying yes and a couple of you saying no. Yes, they said they have painful wrists. We don't know how it happened. We don't know why it happened. We're not even getting to the two Advil yet. We've got to follow our flow chart. I hear somebody got hurt. Okay, now I need to go to the next one. Is the injury illness work related? Now I've got to go to that. Well, from this information, I don't have that information. We need more information. So we have to go to that step two and we have to find out, was it work related? We don't just stop here because we see two Advil. Okay. A lot of people want to do that. That is not where we stop. All right. We got to go through this process and I'll explain why later. Scenario B, there's a chlorine gas leak at XYZ establishment. Two employees are in the area, rushed to the hospital. They're told to stay home the next 2 days as a precautionary measure. Do we stay here? Do we proceed to step two? Was there an injury or illness? We don't know, right? It just says they were in the area, so they were rushed. Chlorine gas leak, that's probably going to be just automatic standard operating procedure. You're going to rush them to the hospital, get them checked out, make sure there's no injury or illness. Stay home for a few days to see if some of those effects of chlorine gas pop up. They don't. We're good. All right. But we have to work this flow chart. The establishment and other locations where one or more employees are working as present in condition of employment. So that's physical locations, that's equipment, materials used by employees. Work related could be, hey, listen, John, I want you to go by and pick up some bagels for the meeting at lunchtime. You go, you trip because it's snow and ice, you break your leg going in to get the bagels. That's work related. Why? Because I told you to do it. Now, you decided to do it on your own while you were on your uh, drive in to work that day, then that's not work related. Nobody told you to do it. But we get some of this, Lowe's location, whatever, because they hurt their back. Why? Because you told them to go get 25 2x6x16s on their way into work. That was as a reason of, for a reason of work. Another one that comes up a lot. Anybody do work out of town or go to conferences for your companies out of town? Slip in the shower, you get hurt. Is that recordable? Maybe not. Why? Because when you hit the hotel, that's home away from home. That's just like you're at your house. Okay. So if it wasn't for work, you did it because you were doing something you weren't told to do, then that's not as big. It's not going to be recordable.
Hey, Matt, we have a question about work related. If
Sure.
the worker comes in with a cold or flu and gets someone else sick, will that be work related?
So this is a fun one because of COVID, right? COVID, we had to prove that it was somebody at work got them sick. Okay. You have to ask questions. Somebody came in, they got sick, and it was COVID. Okay, well, where were you around people? Were you around general public? Did you wear your mask? Did you do this? You have to prove that it's work related. It could be coincidental. I had one office that couldn't be coincidental. There was an office of 12 and 11 of them got COVID. The only one that didn't have COVID was the one that was on vacation. That's hard to say it was incidental anywhere else. Okay. But that's kind of where the proof comes in. And we're going to get to the tuberculosis rule, and we'll talk a little bit about that. If I don't answer that and we've hit the tuberculosis rule, hit me again. I'll go more in depth into it. Here are some exceptions of work related. You're there as a member of general public. You know, Frank is retiring after 35 years. Everybody came in to see Frank, even if it was their day off. Well, one person, tripped and hurt themselves in the parking lot. They were there as general public. That does not end up on your 300 form. All right. If it was required to be there, then it becomes an issue. Symptom arising in the work environment that are solely due to non-work related events or exposure. Voluntary participation in the wellness program, medical or fitness program. Okay. Eating or drinking or preparing foods for personal consumption. I always call this the bagel rule. Back in the 90s, there was bagels for everything, and you would slice them. Nobody used the bagel slicer yet, and they would cut their hands and constantly work-related injuries with, preparing food. Well, if we tell you that's what you have to do and you do it, that's when you get not cited. That's when you have to go on the recordable form. If you decide to do it and it's not a requirement, then you wouldn't be on the form. Personal tasks outside and assigned working hours or personal grooming, self-medication, non-related or intentionally self-inflicted. We had a good one where it was a hotel and the person walked in and you saw him kind of trip, like slip a little bit. And then they looked up for cameras and then they got a good running start and bam, oh, my back. Well, there were cameras everywhere. They just didn't see where the cameras were. So, person's, oh, I'll have my lawyer reach out to you, etc. Then we showed them the video and never heard from them again because it was intentionally self-inflicted, right? Everybody sees little TikTok videos and it's they might deny my request for time off, but they can't deny me for an injury and they pull the ladder over and fall. Well, again, intentionally self-inflicted. So that would not end up there.
Tina has a question. I
Yep.
have an employee who was coming to work on a snowy day. Instead of using the cleared and salted sidewalk, she chose to run through the icy grass area and slipped and fell and broke her leg. Is this work related?
Unfortunately, yes. If it happened on the drive in, were in a car accident and got a broken leg, no. But because they stepped foot out and they started to walk in, yes, it's work related. Compensability might be another issue once they start diving in, right? They did some things that were not correct there. They didn't follow proper safety procedure, but it's probably going to end up on your OSHA 300 form. Um, Use of cleats are a beautiful thing, right? The little things that go over your shoes in the ice and snow. A lot of contractors are really getting helped out with those. Work-related exceptions. Here's one for our question earlier. Common cold or flu. Just because it's so hard to prove that it was done at work. You're exposed to so many things. It's hard to make the common cold and flu. Sorry. Speaking of the common cold and flu, I'm trying to get over a cold, so sorry about the coughing. Mental illness, unless an employee voluntarily provides a medical opinion from a physician that says it was work related. All right. So we've got that. Travel status. Again, an injury that occurs while you're on travel status. Have you established home away from home? Was it for personal reasons or was it for work reasons? I have a bit of a quick story about that. I had a contractor that, you know, I saw Vegas was the area. And apparently, the owner of the company and the VP were out there. The owner of the company didn't feel good, gave the VP the credit card, told him, take her client out for a great time. Well, that client wanted to go to, let's just say, a adult establishment. All right. And apparently got handsy, got punched in the face by the bouncer, the vice president did, and broke his nose. So, broken bone, recordable, was there because the employer told them, show him a good time, didn't say, hey, just take him out for a good steak or something like that. Nope. Here's the credit card, just show him a good time. And they were there because it was work related. So we had a nice long conversation about that. That's kind of one of my hall of shame situations there. But again, home away from home, if they cut themselves shaving or they slip and hurt themselves in the hotel, that's like them hurting themselves at home. Working from home. Again, if they're in their home work environment, if it occurred while the employee is performing work for pay or compensation in the home and are directly related to what they're supposed to be doing, then yes, it's work related. This one, I have one where it's probably my only home one that I've ever done, but we have clients that have us go out and do accident investigations on everything. And this one client had us out and sent me to somebody's house. And when I got there, the young lady had slipped, fallen. She was carrying paper in from her garage. Well, if they tell you the safety person's coming out Monday, what might you do? Maybe clean the place up a little bit. I get there and there's a ton of kids about the same age, probably 6 or 8 of them. It looks like a toy store had exploded in the main living room, and she had a desk in one part of the main living room, this chaos, and then the garage on the opposite side. And I said, okay, well, just tell me what you were doing and how you were doing it. And I'm kind of looking around, kids are screaming and throwing stuff. And I said, I got to ask you, are all the kids yours or is this something else going on? She goes, well, my employer doesn't need to know, but I also run a daycare. Well, your employer does need to know that because are you doing it while you're in the daycare, which is the same time as you're working for your employer? So come to find out the compensability side did not work out in her favor, but we still had to, she claimed it was work related. We had to say it was work related, etc. So working from home.
Matt,
Scenario A. Yep.
sorry, Matt. So Rudy has a question. I think I understand what the question is, but his question was, so requirements are what is in your job description and what a supervisor asked you to do. I think what he means is if the supervisor asked you to do something that's not normally part of your job description, is it still work related?
And you choose to do it, yes. Yes, it's still work related. If anybody asks you, lead person on the job site asks you to do something and you do it, then that's work related. You were directed or given direction by the employer, and that's how that's going to have to be proven.
All right, we have one more here.
Yep.
Can you clarify on the re-injury again versus a new case?
So again, when you have an open case or you have somebody, even if they came back to work and maybe they're on job restriction or job transfer, they can't pick up more than 40 pounds, whatever, but they're still not 100%. So when a person's 100%, you're going to get a medical opinion from the doctor that states this person can go back to work fully released. Fully released means you're going to get, and that person gets hurt again, that's going to go as a new case. They are not fully released. They are still under medical care. Maybe they're in PT, maybe they haven't gotten the release from the doctor yet, but they're still working in some capacity and they get hurt. And that same body part is affected, then it would not be a new case. It would simply be added to the previous case. Does that clarify for you? I'm going to assume yes. You can key up your mic. Okay. So we have a scenario here. An employee gives blood at a voluntary sponsored blood drive and passes out. Do we go to step 3? No. Why? Because it was voluntary. Okay. Voluntary. Scenario B, an employee sprains ankle in company parking lot on his way to work. Do we go on? Yes, we have to go on. All right, because the drive is already over. Drive to and from work does not end up on the 300 form. That's a DOT situation. That is not an OSHA situation. But from the time they pull in and put one foot out, then they become on the OSHA side of life. I'll give you another example. I had a 72-year-old person that ran a crane out on a project. It was slippery and icy. He literally slipped on his own step in his own truck and fell, broke his ribs, blew out his rotator cuff. All sorts of bad things happened to him. And that was work related. Why? Because he was getting out of his truck. That's when that stops. So hopefully that kind of makes that scenario pop for you a little bit. So is it a new case? Was there any previous recorded injury or illness to the same body part? All right. Well, painful left wrist. Now it's painful right wrist. Well, that's a different body part. All right. Painful back. Now it's painful back again. That may be the same body part. So that's one thing we have to ask there. Have they had previous injury or illness, but had not recovered completely? All right. Again, we go with medical uh, opinion. We're not doctors. Unless you're a doctor and you have a PhD, we cannot tell them what they're doing. We have to go with that medical opinion, right? Is there a medical opinion regarding the resolution of the case? Employer has to follow that. Can you get a second opinion? Yes, you can. If an event triggers the reoccurrence, is it a new case? Well, that's going to depend. Was the other one completely, did it completely go away? Again, do we have that doctor? Doctor's note. If signs and symptoms reoccur in the absence of an exposure, it may not be a new case. So when we get to something that's like silicosis or tuberculosis or asbestosis, you can have different things that would trigger a new event, but it's the same injury. It's the same long-term illness. All right. Those would not be a new case. They would just get added to the original. 5 weeks ago, the employee sprained the wrist at work, received support, prescription medication, light duty. 2 weeks ago, the employee was back to normal job, completely recovered. Today, 5 weeks after the injury, the employee complains of pain in the same wrist while moving boxes. Do we need to go on? Yes, we need to go on. We need to find out more information. All right. Makes sense. Scenario B, same thing. 5 weeks ago, the employee sprained a wrist at work and received support, prescription medication, light duty. 2 weeks ago, the employee was back to normal job but continued to take prescription medication. Today, 5 weeks after the injury, complains of pain in the same wrist after moving boxes. Is this a new case? No, it's not a new case. It's the old case, right? Step four. Did we transfer them to another job because of the accident? Did they get medical treatment beyond first aid? Was there loss of consciousness? And is the significant injury or illness diagnosed by a licensed healthcare provider? All right. Record the case if it involves 1 or more days away from work, again, not including the day of the accident, and check the boxes with the case and count number of days. Do not include the date of injury or illness. But that's calendar days. That's not work days. Well, they were scheduled to go to vacation Monday, and this happened on Friday. Doctor said they could go back to work Monday. Well, then there's no days away. They decided to go on vacation. That's regular calendar days. Now, the doctor said they need 5 days off. Then we're going to count those 5 days that the doctor said, plus the 2 days for the weekend. Day counts, again, we talked about before, 180 days. All right. You can also stop it if the employee leaves the company for an unrelated to the injury or illness. They just decide to leave. You can stop the date they left. I had a client, really good guy, but he wasn't quite foreman material for him yet. Got a pretty severe injury to his hand. He was a mechanic and he was making it up to, again, foreman. Well, he had a competitor of theirs that really wanted him as a supervisor. And when he couldn't go back to work as a mechanic for a while, he asked him if there would be a possibility that he could step up and be a supervisor so he could be at full strength. And they said no. So he said, can I go ahead and resign and then move on to this other company? So the safety person called me and said, hey, is that okay? And I said, yes, that's very much okay, because your day count stops when he leaves. He decided to leave on his own. It's still going to be compensable. It's still going to be an accident that happened. But this is something that, we were looking at 3 weeks before the next thing. That's 21 days right there. And he could leave and the day count could stop. So they decided to let him do that. And he got that job and started pretty much the next day. So that was kind of a best case scenario for that company and really for the employee. Again, we have to follow medical opinion on that. Record the case if it involves 1 or more day restricted work. What does restricted work mean? They can't do 1 or more of their functions of their regular job. So whatever that is. This is why it's important to kind of come up with what the job includes and have that somewhere, because that's where that could come back to bite you if you go, oh, they can do everything in their normal job. But, medical opinion says they can't pick up more than 25 pounds. Well, would they have had to pick up 25 pounds doing their normal job? Restricted work, unable to do full workday, unable to perform 1 or more routine functions. An employee's routine functions are those activities employee regularly performs at least once per week. The employee experiences minor musculoskeletal discomfort, may not be recordable. Healthcare professional determines that the employee is fully able to perform all of their duties. That may not be recordable. And the employer assigns a work restriction to the employee for the purposes of preventing a more serious condition. So you say, you know what? You're not feeling good. No lifting for you. Why don't you go do X, Y, and Z? But the doctor says there's nothing wrong with them. then you don't have to record that just because you restricted it. You have to record it when a doctor restricts it. Okay. Everything good so far? Any questions so far? I know I'm going a lot of different ways. This is a pretty big standard. So, job transfer, employees assigned to a job that's other than their normal day-to-day job. Um, Case is recordable if the injured or ill employee performs his or her routine job duties for part of the day and then is assigned to another job for the rest of the day. So you do a little work rotation. Everybody goes, well, then we shouldn't bring them back. Yes, yes, you should. And we'll talk about that later, but get them back as soon as possible. Medical treatment is the management and care of patients combat disease or disorder. These do not include just visits. So, hey, you got to follow up on Monday with me. You got to go to PT on Wednesday. Those days are not days away from work. All right. Hey, we're going to get you an x-ray. X-ray is negative. That's not necessarily recordable. We did some first aid. We used non-prescription medication at non-prescription strength. That's not recordable. All right. The one that said give 2 Advil and we're good to go. It's not recordable. We still had to get down to this part. Now, if they say take 6 Advil because that's prescription strength, that's recordable. Okay. Tetanus is not recordable. So if you get a tetanus shot, that's the only injection you get that is not a recordable. Cleaning or flushing, soaking surface wounds, not a recordable. Wound coverings, butterfly bandages and Steri-strips, not recordable. Stitches, glue, recordable. Okay. There's a difference there. Hot or cold therapy is not recordable. Non-rigid means of support, temporary immobilization, drilling of a fingernail or toenail, eye patches, and removing foreign bodies from the eye just using irrigation or cotton swab, not recordable. All right. You go in with tweezers and the magnet, that makes it recordable. Removing splinters or foreign materials from any other areas using tweezers, cotton swabs, irrigation, or other simple means, not recordable. Finger guards, massages, and drinking fluids for heat stress, all first aid. All right. All work-related cases involving consciousness must be recorded. Well, we said that the person in the voluntary was not recordable because, again, at that level, were they there as a means of work activity? It was no, they were there voluntary for that. That's why that wasn't recordable. That's a question that usually comes up. The following work-related conditions must always be recorded at time of diagnosis by a licensed healthcare provider: cancer, chronic irreversible disease, a punctured eardrum, fractured and or cracked bone or tooth. Okay, those all need to be recorded. Record all work-related needle sticks and cuts, anything that may have infectious materials, blood, etc. We have to record splashes or other exposures, bloodborne pathogens, we have to record. Record cases if an employee is medically removed under medical surveillance. So, hey, we're doing a lot of lead abatement. What do they do with lead abatement people? They check that blood, see how high the lead comes up. They get to a trigger that takes them out of the work area for a while, and then they're allowed to go back and build it back up again. If it's below OSHA's actionable level, it's not recordable. If it's at the actionable level or above, it does become recordable. Okay. That's why the do not record cases that involve voluntary removal. All right. Hearing loss, standard threshold shift, STS, employee hearing level 25 decibels or more above audiometric 0, 2, 3, and 4,000 hertz in the same ears will be recorded as hearing loss. Those of you in general industry, if you have high noise areas, you're required to do a pre-employment screening for hearing loss, figure out what your baselines are, and that's easier to prove. Those of you in construction are not required to do that, but it's a good idea to do that because whenever they learn about hearing loss or they need hearing aids, suddenly it just became work related. So, FYI. Compute STS per OSHA standard. Compare employees' audiogram with their baseline audiogram. All right. Adjust current audiograms for aging. No adjustment to aging for audiometric damage that's 25 decibels or more above audiometric zero. In construction, that can be quite a problem for some of our companies because they suddenly realize this, and then we're buying some major hearing devices.
And
TB case. Yep.
Matt, we have a couple questions in chat. So
Yep.
Tina is asking, we use a lot of staffing agencies. If someone is injured who is on the payroll of the staffing agency, do we need to add them to the form?
If they do not have supervision, if they are rental labor basically, then you treat them like an employee. You're required to train them. You're required to make sure they're protected from all the hazards. They'll end up on your OSHA 300 form. If they have supervision, so they basically become a subcontractor, then they'll be on their 300 form, not your 300 form. That's a big difference.
Okay. The second question regarding cancer. We have an employee just diagnosed. He's likely leaving as it's bad, but what do we need to do for our OSHA logs? Anything?
Was it figured out that it was something to do with the employment? So was he a welder and now he has some kind of related cancer? Or was it something that would have to come from more from the doctor to tell him if it was work related?
Yeah, it's not work related, she says. So
Okay, then you don't have to worry about that. TB infection. This is what COVID was going to go with and then changed, but the worker's living in the household with somebody who's diagnosed with active TB, you don't record it. Public health department has identified the worker as a contact of an individual with active TB outside of work, then you don't have to record it. And a medical investigation shows the employee's infection was caused by exposure away from work, you don't have to record it. Okay. When TB is involved, you will know because the health department will be contacting you and every employee that's been around this particular person. So again, here's the different forms. We have the OSHA 300. We keep this up to date. We do not share this with anybody if we can help it. OSHA can request it. Some other people request it. Anybody outside of OSHA or your in-house safety or safety consultants, insurance, etc., I would highly suggest redacting all the names so they don't get into the wrong hands. This is not the form that needs to be posted February 1st, the end of April. 301, this is a form you can use if your accident form does not already have this. You guys already have a first report of accident that you have with your insurance companies, I'm sure, that has more information on this. I often tell people and caution people 301 form or 301 forms, any of your accident forms that you're going to turn in. I like to use loophole words like allegedly and according to, that sort of thing. Not as many details. In-house forms, I want every detail. I want to know which way the wind was blowing and how fast it was. If somebody was walking by with earbuds in, I want to know what they were listening to. All that information is in-house. That doesn't go on the OSHA forms. All right. That's a big thing to understand. You do not need to use the 301 if you do already use a form that has all this information on it. And this is very general. So more than likely you have a form with more information on it than the 301. But it's there to use if you want to. 300A, this is the one that you're going to post. So again, you're going to have all your totals on here. You're going to have all your information on here, and you're going to have the highest ranking company official sign off on this form. All right. This is the one that gets posted February 1st to the end of April. Anybody know why it gets posted February 1st to the end of April? So as an employee, you can take a look at it and go, oh, wait a minute, we had, this many injuries. Maybe I'm a new employee and it says there was a fatality. Did I take over from the fatality? There's information I might want to know. It's not for OSHA. OSHA can request this any time of the year. All right. OSHA will cite you for not having it. All right. $16,500 for not having it February 1st to the end of April. So I would definitely have it. This is a YouTube clip, and I can paste this into the chat if you want, but this tells you how to report it to OSHA. All right. Again, 2025, you have until March 2nd. If you're in construction, you see the things in blue. If you click on that and look at if you're in construction, you're one of those people that are in that 20 to 249 employees, then you have to create your account and go on and actually put in your 300 information. All right. If you're in certain other ones, it's 250 or more. But mostly, how many of you are in construction in here? A good chunk of you. So you're going to be putting this onto OSHA most likely. Again, post February 1st, the end of April, report online by March 2nd. All right. That started in 2021 and it's continued to go. All right. If you go to OSHA.gov, get out of this for a second and stop sharing my screen for just a second, and I will pull you up the website over here just so you can see it. Take this back and share my screen again. Can everybody see my screen again? Okay, good. So injury and illness submissions, they've already started. If you go through this and you click on this whole section on OSHA.gov, it gives you a step-by-step process of how to get through submitting it. If you've never done it before, it does require you to set up an account. And once you set up that account, which will have a password and everything else, it's easy to just drag the files over. Okay. If not, then you'll need to go through and set all that up. And then every year you just drag your files in. I get some people who go, well, I didn't know I needed to do it. I'll go back and do my last, years since 2001. Unfortunately, when you do that, it sends a flag to OSHA, and most of my clients who have realized they were supposed to be doing it and didn't try to do the right thing, and then they get cited by OSHA. So they just do this year and move on. Fewer of those have been cited by OSHA. So do what your conscience tells you, but I can tell you by past experience, people go, whoops, we didn't realize we were supposed to do that. And unfortunately, trying to rectify that cost them an OSHA penalty. While we're on here, this is the same place. If you type establishment search up here in the search bar, you can look up anybody's OSHA history. And then something that, is sad, but we use all the time is if you see these names and uh, ages, those are all fallen workers. And there's actually a memorial page that has pictures of almost all those workers. So if you need to spark a little, you know, hit it home type situation, pull that up and you can see it's all walks of life that we usually, unfortunately, kill every year. It's about 5,000 people every year that, unfortunately, lose their lives doing what we do every day. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop my share.
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I just want to go back to, I'm Tina, I'm the one that asked about the staffing agencies.
Okay.
And you said as long as, so when you say supervision, so we have supervisors that are on my payroll that oversee these employees, but there's no supervisors from the staffing agencies that are here. So,
So those end up on your 300 form.
okay, all right,
You contact that agency and ask them how much extra to send a supervisor. It's probably a couple dollars an hour. And they call one of them a supervisor, and then they
okay,
become a subcontractor. They end
okay,
up on their 300 form, not yours.
okay,
And I'm sure the insurance company can tell you all about compensability with those people as well. So,
okay. All right, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? That was a great question.
Excuse me, Matt. I'm
Yeah.
Rudy Escobar with the AFS. If we have a program where all our employees are able to log in to submit their time form, and we have the ability to make announcements there, can we make the announcement of the 300A form, or does it have to be in a physical form at the job sites or at the office?
It would be great to do both. The written requirement is to have it posted where employees can see it. from February 1st to the end of April,
So not,
physically posted.
yes, now physically posted up. That would be at every job site that we have.
Correct. Just like the
Thank,
OSHA posters.
yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. Other questions? These are great questions. If you're thinking it, somebody else is too. Just tap your mic or put it in the chat. I'm happy to answer.
We have one in chat here. We have a gap in our safety position in our hiring now. I don't know that we've been reporting through OSHA. Is there a way to confirm? I don't even know if we have an account.
So you would go through setting up your account, and the first thing it asks you your establishment name and your NAICS code. And it kind of asks you, I call them like TurboTax type questions because it's going to tell you, yes, you have to do it or no, you don't. If your company name is in there, you can say yes, and it'll tell you you do have an account. If your company name doesn't come up, you don't have an account, just start a new one, put it in this year's information, and then just be ready in case you need to put in the rest. But that would be my opinion is you just put in this year and move forward. And while we're waiting for other people to ask questions, I'm going to put in my name and cell phone number. This is directly to me. You do not need to be my client to ask a question if you are with Preferred. Okay. So there's my cell phone. It's in the chat.
Hello? Hello.
Yes, I see a name hand up where I have three people. Timothy Carden, I think, is on the screen.
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Quick question. So just to confirm, you have to have at least 10 people that's working at your main site in order to fill out the form, or it could be a lower number of people that you would need to fill out this form.
10 people anytime during the entire course of the calendar year. So let's say you have 8 people, but from time to time you bring in, just like the question was from, I believe, Tina about the temporary laborers, you bring in 3 or 4 to clean up the yard. Excuse me. As soon as you go over 10, anytime during the calendar year, you are required to fill out this form. All right.
Is that your own employees, or what if they're subcontractors? What if they
That's
work
your own employees or temporary labor, anybody who's supervised by you. The reason you need a supervisor, that creates a subcontractor relationship, and your subcontractors do not end up on your 300 form.
So we have a corporate office because we're a management team, right? So our management office is located in DC. And then at times, our day-to-day, we have 3 direct employees. But then any given time, we may have additional employees or engineers, I should say, that may stop by to do work here. So it can reach up to 10 or more than 10 at times.
Okay, so I would keep the 300 form. Hopefully you don't have any accidents and you just put 0 across the board and you're good.
Okay.
That's definitely not going to hurt.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Does even 0 accidents get reported online? Yes. Yeah. You hope that's what you're putting on there, that it's 0 across the board. But all your other information will go on there. All right. Well, I'll stay on for a minute. If anybody wants to stick on and ask questions. Oh, here we go. What's the next one? If you have never reported online, do you go back and enter the past years? I would love to say yes to that, but I can tell you from at least 3 of my clients that went back and did that, they received, all 3 of them received citations for trying to do that. But the ones, and I have several more that just started reporting the year they found out and moved forward, none of those got citations. So I can just tell you from past experience, it's up to you what you do. I would normally say yes, but due to that past experience, I'd probably put in today and move forward if it were me, but that's just me. Again, if you have those one-offs or you have another question, I'll stick on. Everybody else, I appreciate you being here. You're more than welcome to pop off or sit on if you have it. And I've already put my number on there, but 703-930-2760 is my cell. feel free to reach out with questions. I'm always willing to answer a safety question for people. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'm going to stop this recording.